Attorney General Jeff Sessions throwing down the gauntlet against the war on cops, ordering a full review of all police reform activities put forth during President Obama's administration. It's all part of an effort to strengthen law enforcement, a core principle, of course, of the Trump administration. Here to discuss, Bernard Kerik, former commissioner of New York City. I've got the two-page report here, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And I figured the way I do is just kind of go through and ask you about some of these things because, he talks first and foremost about the safety and protection of the public being the paramount concern and duty of law enforcement. You would say to yourself, that sounds like common sense, but perhaps it's not anymore.
Well, it's not after the last administration. That wasn't the premier focus of justice. They were more anti-police, anti-law enforcement than pro. He's making it very clear, as the president did during his campaign, they're going to be here to support the cops, and I think that's a part of his message.
Now, President Obama launched these major federal investigations into something like 23, 24 local police departments. In fact, hitting many of them with different sorts of sanctions and things like that. I know that they're looking at some of these things. If you're in Chicago, if you're in Philadelphia, New York, is this good news for the citizens? Is this good news for the cops, or can it be good news for both?
I think it's good news for both. I think these are things that should be looked at. You know, you can't go out and violate civil rights, but when they start these investigations, the U.S. attorneys, they do so under the Obama administration. They did so with the end result in their focus early on. At the end of the day, it's imperative that it's justified. This stuff is justified because what happens is it costs enormous amounts of money. You have to have compliance officers. You need monitors. You need all kind of stuff. If the department's gonna do what they're supposed to do, let them do their job.
So this is more about intimidation because Jeff Sessions in this letter says it's not the responsibility of federal government to manage non-federal law enforcement agencies. Was that more about intimidation than anything else? And if it was, it certainly didn't help the esprit de corps.
Well, it did intimidate. It scared the hell out of departments. It put cops on notice. You weren't going to be indemnified and supported by the Justice Department and by your own agencies, as a matter of fact, in some cases. In this case, he's looking at a number of things, in addition to the consent decrees, assisting departments with technology, looking at the task forces around the country, the FBI bank robbery task force, terrorist task force, DEA's task force. I'll tell you, people should look at the memo, see what it says. I think it's really good news for local and state police around the country.
Now, one thing you and I talked about in our very first interview, back in the 70s, there was this so-called blue wall of silence where bad apples were protected. Just sort of an honor thing. You protected someone, you went out every day, and it gave the entire force a bad name. He talks about the misdeeds of individual bad actors and saying that it should not impinge upon or determine the legitimacy of the honorable work of the overall police departments. And I think that's true. I think, we're a big country, almost 300 million people. Occasionally, someone's going to make a mistake.
You know, Charles, it's common sense. Are there bad apples out there? Yes. When you find them, you deal with them either through the department administrative process or legally, and you lock them up. But at the end of the day, that's an extremely small percentage. Most of the men and women, 99.9% of them, go out there on a daily and put their lives on the line for this country. And I think he realizes that.
They run toward danger when everybody else is running away from it. One other point that I wanted to talk about, and this is a collaboration between federal and local law enforcement. You just kind of talked about it a little bit, but every time we hear about the issue of terrorism, this comes up, the miscommunication. And somehow that's got to be tightened up so we can nip more of these attacks in the bud, because I'm sure we are.
And that's what the memo is going to do. That's what this directive is going to do. Build those relationships, reinforce those relationships, and make sure that the Justice Department is working productively with local and state police.
Do you feel like the esprit de corps I just mentioned, is it coming back? Is it coming back to police departments?
Started coming back after Election Day.
Yeah, midnight, huh? Around 1 a.m. November 9th.
A little later, but by 3.
Just as soon as the market started coming back. Bernard Kerik, thank you very much.
Thanks, Charles.
Really appreciate it.